and welcome. So this time around I have a couple items from Harbor Freight that they've released recently to take a look at. The first one is this Braun 8000 lumen screw-in shop light. You know, for most people, shop lighting is really important, especially the older you get and the more your eyesight fails. For me, it's got a double purpose. I never have enough light to shoot video adequately. Things get really contrasty and dark, and you need to fill in spots so that you don't have dark spots. Otherwise, you don't have enough dynamic range to capture all the stuff in the shadows, and oftentimes the stuff in the shadows is what I'm actually working on. So I constantly need more light, and so I'm looking for other solutions. I've bought other lights similar to this on Amazon, and they've been okay. They've varied from pretty decent build quality to pretty mediocre build quality. One of the things I noticed was the last set I got, this diffusion, these heat diffusers were made out of plastic, which plastic is not a very good thermal conductor. And LEDs, unlike incandescent bulbs, do not radiate infrared, so they get rid of their heat almost purely by conduction. And so if they don't have a good heat sink on them, they get much, much hotter, which is not a great design idea. This light claims it's 8,000 lumens and 50,000 hours of life. I'll believe that when I see it. Maybe the LEDs themselves are, but I bet you the power supply will not be. This was 29 bucks, and we're gonna check it out and take a look. This is probably blown out, but I actually have a bunch of this style light already. So these two over here are both the same type of light. They're five pedaled lights, and they're the ones with the plastic heat sinks on them. That's a horrible design in my opinion, although I don't know, they've been up and running about a month. They're on hours at a time, and they seem to have worked so far. We'll see how long they last. And over here, this one is a different model still, 4 pedals, and it is a metal heat sink on the light bulbs with 4 pedals, and 3 pedal over here. This one also is a metal heat sink. Again, I'm still surprised anyone makes them with plastic heat sinks, although it's a lot cheaper to make. Again, plastic heat sinks don't work as well, although I gotta say, these do not seem as bright as these over here. So I think they're pushing their LEDs harder over here, or more LEDs per chip, which keeps your heat concentrated, so maybe they need more heat sinking in over here, because just with my eyes, these other ones are completely blown out, and these are not. To do a rough comparison, I have a light meter built into my phone, which uses the phone's camera. Definitely not a calibrated light sensor. Lots of problems with doing this, but to get a relative measurement, this will probably suffice. So I'm getting 3,200 lux here from the 3 pedal light. And if we wander over one of the 5 pedal lights here and get underneath here, you can see that they are much, much dimmer, about 1,323 lux at waist height. And if I go over to the 5 pedal version and get right underneath, focus, about 3,161 lux. So substantially more. And if I look at a spotlight, which concentrates all this light in one spot here, this spotlight up here is an LED spotlight, and it's about 1,000 lux. Alrighty, so let's just open this guy. This light was 29 bucks at Harbor Freight. I think we need to learn to do something about packaging too. Packaging is fun to look at, and you know, I guess you can appreciate something that's well packaged, but other than having something delivered safely, I think it would be a good idea to find ways to minimize packaging so we don't end up with so much stuff in landfills. This is cardboard, which is supposedly recyclable, but once they put the plastic on it, I think that might throw a wrench in the whole recycling process. So here's the light bulb, and this is very similar to some other ones I found, and guess what? Plastic heat sinks. Not my favorite. So they're adjustable. There's no center section. There's just three light sections. So what I'll do is I'll replace one of my overhead lights with this and find out how many foot candles this thing puts out as a rough measurement to compare to the other lights I already have up there. So they're pretty wide panels, much wider than some of the other ones, actually much wider than all of them. The nice thing about this style light is if you can focus a little bit of light specifically at 3 different directions in this case, or 5 in some of them, and that can be really handy. See, and then they've got things like this to protect the threads here. This is going right in the landfill, single use. It is just a shame, to be honest with you. Even the circuitry portion of this is plastic. Plastic is never a good choice, and heck, you know, as long as we're at it, let's just see how they did. So LEDs are fed with constant current. So normally what you would have is a constant current power supply, and it would drive whatever voltage is necessary to maintain that current flowing in the device, the LEDs in this case, and that would keep consistent brightness. If they get really cheap with a design, oh look, there's an on-off switch on this. That's really unnecessary. Wow. This is the most complicated switching supply for a light I think I've ever seen. Usually they're very, very simple. So here's the weak link. See all these electrolytic capacitors right here? They're the weak link in any power supply design, especially high temperature situations, because they dry out. When they dry out, one of two things happens. One, they dry out and the inner plates, the dielectric dries out. The plates are separated so much that the capacitance goes way down. They're not a capacitor anymore. The other thing, which is worse, is when they dry out and the plates end up touching in the middle and shorting out. That is a really big problem. So they actually used 150C capacitors. So 150C capacitors, have their rated life at 150 Celsius. Cheaper capacitors are 85C, and they went with the more expensive ones. I am really surprised at that. You've got a bunch of different kinds of caps in here. These could be tantalums or possibly ceramics for high frequency. They've got discrete, what I'm guessing are MOSFETs here to drive this. It looks like they have 3 separate circuits. There's 3 transformers here and 3 separate FETs. Wow, that is an expensive design. So they drove each one of these panels separately, it looks like. Huh, that is really surprising. Yeah, looks like 3 duplicate circuits. I am very impressed. Still don't understand the on-off switch, what someone would want to end up using that for, but all right, what do you say we pop this guy back together? I don't think there's any, on the bottom of this board is going to be, I'm guessing, 3 different ICs. I don't know if there's any reason to get that far into it. There probably would be some surface mount components on the other side, but I don't think that will matter in the long run. So let's pop this guy together and go take some measurements. One thing to point out before we put this on is that this kind of light has a very short stem, and obviously it goes to a very wide portion right off the bat. And a lot of sockets will not fit this type light bulb at all because they're expecting a conically shaped, bulb neck. And if they don't have that, this will run into the fixture before you can screw it in. So I had to buy some of these for the other ones. Every other one I bought, same problem, are extenders. And that lets this match the profile of a normal bulb and fit into many fixtures. So we're gonna pop that on here. By the way, if you wanted to see the label here, hopefully you can read that. It says 80 watts, 750 milliamps at 120 volts, 8,000 lumens, 5,000 Kelvin is the color temperature. Do not use with dimmers. Suitable for damp locations. I wonder about that too. Not for use in totally enclosed luminaires. So they're not counting on a lot of good heat sinking. Although I do notice pretty widely spaced LEDs here. They claim 8,000 lumens. So we'll go screw this in to one of my fixtures and we'll take the same measurement we did before. The Harbor Freight 3-petal light is measuring about 3,400 lux, so a pretty good amount of light being distributed right there, waist height. When I first turned it on, it was around 4,000, and as it stayed on for a little while, it got a little bit dimmer, which is a little disconcerting. That could mean if they use phosphorus, that the phosphorus, you're burning up some of the phosphorus, or that they're overdriving the LED and its output was initially high, but it started to break down a little bit and went down. So we'll have to check this out over time and see if they hold up. Because if they get dimmer with time, or significantly dimmer with time, that'll obviously be a problem. I have installed the Harbor Freight light over my lathe and removed one other light, and between that and the 4-petal center section one, I'm getting great coverage on my lathe. And with the camera, you can see that I can get pretty good even lighting on the chuck here, which is where I do most of my shooting. So that should be excellent. I'm hoping that'll be enough. I used to have this very red one right over top, but I took it down when I put the Harbor Freight one in at an angle. So hopefully that'll be an adequate job. So after running these for a while, I took it down and boy, they get quite warm. However, I was mistaken before, pleasantly so. I scratched through this and it actually scratched quite a while. They put a very thick coat of paint. It actually is aluminum. When I felt this with the fingernail and it sounded like plastic, but it is actually aluminum. Well, good on them. That is a definite step up from the other ones. The ones over there, these guys definitely are plastic because I actually cut into one to double check. This one I just did the fingernail test and the way it sounded, but I was mistaken, and this guy is definitely aluminum, as you can see here where I've scraped away the paint. It's actually a really thick coat of paint. Probably would have been better off if they'd left the paint off. It would conduct heat better, but in any case, these do get quite warm. I will give them that. I think, imagine if they're on for too long, they'll get too hot to touch. The power supply, I don't notice so much heat, but then again, it's in a plastic enclosure with tiny little vents. So hard to say. I think overall, I think this might be a decent product. The one thing we'll have to find out long term is, well, how long does it last? Because if it's really bright initially, the brightness goes down rapidly because of degeneration, either the phosphor or the LED, because they're driving it too hard. That'll obviously make it no good. The second thing is, will the power supply inside cook itself to death? And maybe this will only last a year if you run your shop a lot. Heck, if you're one of those people that shop as your business and you run 24, you run 8-hour or 10-hour, 14-hour days every day, this may be a really bad choice. I guess time will tell, so I will let you know as I discover more. But that's the Braun screw-in shop light, 8,000 lumens. Thanks for watching. Hope you find it useful. Hope to see you next time.